Let's discuss this a bit more. We're joined by Martin Ewi from the Institute of Security Studies over Skype. Martin, good evening to you. Let's start with how government looks in this, because, you know, when there are ransom demands, they will have to be involved. The South African government always says they do not pay ransoms. But how do they look at the end of this ordeal for Mr. McGown?
Thank you very much and good evening. Let me first of all start by really congratulating Stephen for the release. I think he's one of the most lucky persons on earth. It is very rare for somebody to spend that amount of time in captivity and come out safe and strong and smart the way he is. So congratulations, Stephen. Yes, I think, you know, this is an issue that it's very delicate. It's an issue that we face a moral dilemma because countries, on the one hand, for very good reasons, do not want to negotiate, do not want to pay ransom to terrorist groups. But you have, on the other side, the family, which is very desperate, which will, they want their loved ones to come back alive, they want their loved ones to be released. Then, you know, there is tension here. So what do government do? Government like South Africa, which they say they don't pay ransom to terrorist groups, and some even say they don't negotiate. I think in the case of South Africa, they do, because they did reach out to Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, even if the reach out was indirectly. But the government has been involved from day one, the way we are told. And I think this is an excellent news to hear that the South African government really showed that its responsibilities really well from day one to the end. But I think for the fact that it took so long, it tells you that, you know, this was not an easy feat. It wasn't easy negotiation. There are many parties that were involved, and I think this makes it even more complicated. But now, what do countries, how do they negotiate, especially where, you know, they don't want to speak directly to the groups? I think South Africa did the right thing by involving the gift of the givers, which already has an excellent track record in negotiating with these kind of groups and actually securing the release of many hostages. So yeah, the government reached out to every actor that could matter in this business, and I'm sure it's what brought them success at the end.
So that ransom, if it was paid, it's not going to be confirmed because of the policies. We'll never actually know. But should government be doing more to warn people about certain areas in Africa? The Department of Foreign Affairs saying it doesn't do that as a matter of principle. But is that the right call for South African people and our security when traveling?
Well, you are right. We at the Institute are trying to carry out a research to see, you know, whether South Africans are becoming more and more vulnerable, more and more susceptible to terrorist kidnappings around the world, because South Africa is now ranked among the top 10 countries that are very attractive to terrorist groups. Kidnapping, it's certainly the top country in Africa when it comes to citizens being kidnapped, and therefore it means that South Africans traveling abroad, particularly to in danger areas such as areas in Mali, in northern Mali, where there are terrorist groups, you know, to be extremely careful. We've had in the past 5 years many South Africans being kidnapped. South Africans have been kidnapped in Somalia. They've been kidnapped in Yemen. They've been kidnapped in Sudan. They've been kidnapped now in Syria. So, and therefore the list is growing, which means that South Africans are becoming extremely vulnerable to terrorist groups outside South Africa. And therefore, the government should do something here. The government needs to carry out its own homework, which is to do research to find out why is this happening and how can South Africans be more safer when they travel outside. If you look at the situation in which Stephen was kidnapped, he was in a restaurant enjoying his meal. You know, he was also a tourist in Mali, something that is welcome. You know, that we should actually encourage South Africans to go to other African countries to enjoy, you know, the beauty of the continent, you know, and not only go to Europe. And here in this particular case, it became very unfortunate that Stephen was kidnapped. But again, if the government was really prepared, I think Stephen would have been pre-warned about some of the insecurity development in that country, and would have probably taken different measures in terms of where he could have been at that time.
I personally would appreciate access to that information. In finality, Martin, you were saying he is so lucky. Just tell us, how big is the ransom business in the world? How many people are out there in this sort of crazy situation?
It is a big business. If you look at Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, which is the group that kidnapped Stephen, they've made they've made their money, they've made their riches from kidnapping. Between 2005 and 2012, the group was estimated to have earned more than $150 million only from kidnapping alone. So therefore, it's a group that's kidnapping to it is its business. So they live from that particular business, and therefore, you know, when it comes to kidnapping, terrorist groups rely on this for their funding. If you look again for other groups such as Boko Haram, you see groups such as the Islamic State, Al-Shabaab. Kidnapping to them is a big business because it is what guarantees money, you know, in their pocket. Now, for example, the government is saying no ransom was paid to Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb. It is very confusing because news coming out of, for example, if you read New York Times, they tell you that 4.2 million was paid for Stephen to be released. The government says no amount was paid. The gift or the givers confirmed that no amount was paid. So I don't know. But what we know, I've been studying this issue for some time now. What we know is that wherever ransom is paid, it is always the topmost secret that we'll never probably know. You know, except you are very close to these people, and then they can confide in you. But even this is also very rare.
You say it is a moral quagmire because you can then encourage kidnappings. Thank you so much for your time, Martin Ewi from the Institute of Security Studies.